So what I'm going to start with to kind of go over a little bit of history. Many of you that have followed the project understand that we actually had scheduled a public hearing back last October. At the time, the Florida Department of Transportation attended an MPO meeting, that's the Metropolitan Planning Organization Board meeting for Broward County. The city of Deerfield Beach raised concerns there that the project wasn't meeting their expectations, asked us to delay it. So we did delay the public hearing. We took that opportunity to meet with our stakeholders, particularly meet with the city of Deerfield Beach and their staff, understanding the issues and the concerns, so we could focus more on how to improve the project. So Phil Schwab is here. Steve and I actually we got started off to a little bit different, rocky start, I guess, this new venue for us. But he is the project manager with the firm of RS&H, was hired by the Florida Department of Transportation. Him and his team have worked hard over the last year, taking a lot of the information that we've gained from the city and other stakeholders, looking at how we can improve it. So he's going to talk about particularly those improvements to the project, and we'll go over those in a little bit more detail. So, okay.
Mention the virtual webinars.
Yeah, I'm just looking at you, Phil. Your camera's on, I think. I'm sorry, folks. I'm running into a little technical difficulty. I've kind of lost the screen on mine. Yeah, I think I got kicked out.
Okay. So as Rob mentioned, we've been coordinating quite a bit with the city of Deerfield, trying to address some of the concerns, improve the project, make it a project that everybody's more happy with or more accepting. We are completed our draft analysis of everything, and that's what we're moving forward with at the public hearing. You'll hear a couple options that the project has that we want to make sure you understand and provide whatever feedback you'd like on that. We held 3 virtual webinars back in the summer, very well attended. A lot of people got a lot of information. I hope everybody here attended those. This is just an extension of that and some of the additional information and things that we've addressed throughout. All right, so everybody's familiar with the location. The important aspect of this graphic is really showing you that there is a Southwest 10th Street study, the blue that you see in the middle of the screen, and then we also have a study for I-95. So we're really hand in hand with that project, particularly showing how the connections are made at 95. They are planned to move forward together in construction.
So Phil, I don't think they're seeing the presentation on the webinar.
We are not.
Here we go.
All right, I know the rest of the team that's virtual, their audio went down. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Is there anybody out there that can, we heard Commissioner Drosky. Commissioner, did you hear and see the slides from this one?
I did not see the slides, but I did hear you.
Phil, can you hear me?
Apparently, Kelsey, he can't hear you, me, or Miranda.
Yeah, he said that he actually could hear you, Commissioner Drosky. I just don't think he can hear Miranda or I.
Now we can.
Okay, excellent.
I think we're back on track. All right, we're gonna continue. Thank you.
So you want to go to the next slide? I'll try to pick up a little bit. So I really think so. This really project corridor, I think we've covered this. There's actually 2 PD&E studies that the WDOT is managing. The first one, obviously, along the Southwest 10th Street corridor itself, it's highlighted in blue. And then on to your right, along I-95, there's also a separate PD&E study. So these CD studies are on the same schedule and the same track. And the public hearing that we have actually next week is a joint public hearing for both projects. So we're very interested that you understand both and any comments you may have. Also, on to the left of the screen, the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, which is a part of the Florida Department of Transportation. They are conducting their own project development environmental study, and that's to look at adding capacity or adding lanes to the turnpike as well as Sawgrass Expressway. And they're also looking at improving the interchange of the Sawgrass and the turnpike. That project is in an earlier phase of development, although they do expect to come out to the public and present some of their working alternatives early in 2021 and to get feedback and on their concepts from the public and engage with the stakeholders. Next slide, please. So this slide really just kind of shows that regional area. It just gives you a high-level idea of the traffic, the vehicle traffic trips throughout the corridor. If you look at these red arrows, basically from Southwest Broward County up through Northeast Broward and Palm Beach County, that 51,000 trips per day just kind of shows that traffic that's trying to cross through this corridor. Converse to that, if you're looking at from Southeast Broward to Northwest Palm Beach County or just into the west side of Palm Beach County, it's about half that, 23,000 trips are making that movement. So this project is really kind of a missing link to kind of help satisfy that transportation need that's trying to get through Broward and Palm Beach counties. This slide just identifies the issues that have come up through basically the congestion that's grown over the years as the population has grown and the traffic has grown throughout the county and throughout this corridor. We've seen an increase in crashes along Southwest 10th Street. What's highlighted in blue is really just the number of crashes at these intersections between 2012 and 2016. And it actually does put this corridor on the Florida Department of Transportation's high crash list for the state. Next slide, please. Okay. Any project like this, any project development environmental study we do, we really start out with the purpose and need. These 5 bullets really just kind of summarize the needs of the project and the purpose why we're here. I mentioned congestion already. So basically addressing the congestion issues that basically cause safety and operational concerns is one of our main points. Obviously, we know the local Southwest 10th Street through the congestion, it does have issues and it does have its own aspects that very important to us for the local businesses and the residents. There's a lot of businesses along the corridor, particularly at both ends. At both ends of the corridor, you have large distribution centers that basically use this corridor for their transit needs, as well as local residents that use it on a daily basis. So by improving this project, adding the capacity, we're really going to enhance the intermodal and economic development of not just the region, but also this area in Deerfield Beach. And as well as, very importantly, we're going to improve the emergency response times for any incidents that occur and basically allow for better evacuation operations to occur. I-95 has its own purpose and need, if you will. It's very similar to Southwest 10th Street. It's really highlighted by the capacity and operational deficiencies right now. And what we're planning on doing is improving that by adding additional capacity for the express lanes and improving those interchanges, both the interchange at Southwest 10th Street and at Hillsborough Boulevard. It's also going to improve the evacuation emergency services. It's going to help that transportation demand. Many of you use I-95, so you understand that. And it's going to kind of build in that overall system connectivity. So I did talk a little bit initially about we are in we call the PD&E phase or project development. This is actually the second phase of kind of a five phases to the overall project delivery. From the planning, we go into PD&E. PD&E really, the main focus is developing alternatives, looking at environmental issues and concerns, meeting with the public and the public stakeholders, getting feedback, and making changes to try to improve the project. As we get through this phase, which we'll talk a little bit later on about the public hearing, which is coming up, we'll be moving into the design phase where we advance some of the features that we're talking about now as concepts into make full design. We will actually identify specific right-of-way needs. We will start the right-of-way process, and then that will lead us into the construction phase. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Phil. He's going to talk a little bit more about the project detail.
Now we have a question here.
Okay, so my question is to the previous slide.
Trying.
Are you controlling this?
Yeah.
Okay, so at what point, assuming that the December, meeting is a continuation of last month's project, at what point does this leave the mode of being a study becoming an official project?
It's actually an official project, if you will.
Hey, Rob, you may want to repeat the question for everybody.
Okay, I think the question was asked, at what point in time does this study, the PD&E study that's going on, become an actual project? And I guess what I mean by that, when does it go into the design phase and move forward? It actually is a whole project. The project has been in the state DOT work program for a couple of years now. It's gone through a number of cycles with the Broward MPO where they have voted to approve this project. We do have funding for construction at this stage, very large amount of money. We'll touch on that at the end of the project. So as we get towards the end of this particular phase, we will finish all the documents. Right now, we have the documents related to the project on our website. For those of you that are interested to go and review those, there's a lot of technical information. There's a lot of just good information about the project. So I encourage you to do that. As we finish, go through the public hearing and make a determination of the alternative that moves forward to the next phase. That'll occur. Our plan is to go to the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, kind of announce that and move forward. There is going to be a time where we're actually in an overlap. We'll go ahead and start the design phase as we finish up all the documentations and get, actually we call it location design concept approval. And that approval is actually the summation or the culmination of the PD&E study phase, and then the official segue into the design phase. Although there is overlap that is actually already ongoing, and it will continue over the next several months. Hopefully. Yeah, we're anticipating completing this PD&E study next summer, possibly in the next late spring or early summer. We'll be finished with that. We're targeting right now in June of 2021.
That would actually be the approval of the final documents. So the final documents will be done ahead of that. And then they go forward for a final review and approval. And as Rob mentioned, that LDCA, the Location Design Concept Acceptance, which authorizes those later phases to move forward in the project. There's one project, they just have different program phases, so that would authorize those, the federal funds for them.
And we'll know when we move officially to the phase.
Correct.
We'll know when that's right.
Yes, we will make a notice when we actually receive the location design concept approval. Yes.
And most likely you'll see preliminary design activities continue because there's a lot of questions to be answered. And so we want to continue that engagement and continue that coordination so that it can be ready to move forward to those final stages so everybody has their input throughout that whole process.
Right, I would assume that before you get to that point, there's going to be a lot of discussion back and forth between the DOT and the city about which of the two plans you're going to go with, and then all the things that fall into place.
Yeah, you'll see, we'll talk about noise walls and that type of stuff. You know, that'll just be a continual effort once we keep moving forward to keep everybody engaged and to make some decisions. You know, that the residents will have input on the city and the department, so it'll be a continual process. Rob, if you're getting an echo on the other one, I'll unmute and we'll just switch back and forth. Okay, so the project has really two facilities in one corridor. You see on the left, which is the connector road, that's on the north end of the corridor. So this is just a section view looking to the east. So the connector road will be on the north side. It'll be 4 lanes divided, be a higher speed, no stopping throughout the corridor. Trucks will be allowed. It will not be tolled. We estimate the design speed to be 60 miles per hour, whereas on the local road, it'll go to a curb and gutter that you see on the right. It'll accommodate bicycles and pedestrians, and I've got another slide to talk a little bit more about that. And it'll be a lower speed, 35 miles per hour. So this graphic is a line diagram that we use quite a bit just to help illustrate and get a grasp on the different connections that the connector road will make. From left to right, you see on the top green lines. Those represent the connector lanes, both directions. And below that are black lanes, which represent the local lanes. Over to the right, you see pink lanes that go up and down. They're the 95 express lanes, and then black lines that represent the general purpose lanes. So the connections on the west end at Sawgrass Expressway, the connector will go directly into the connector. So it is an extension of that Sawgrass. When you're going westbound, you can continue on the connector lane, or if you're in the connector lane, you'll be able to continue directly onto the Sawgrass Expressway westbound. And then if you're already on the Sawgrass going eastbound, you'll have a choice to either stay on or get onto the connector road or go to the local lanes. So it'll be a left to the connector lanes, a right to the local lanes. And then over at 95, if you're already on the connector lanes, you'll be able to access north and south, both express lanes as well as general purpose lanes on 95. That's a big change from what we had done a year ago. Before, we were just making a connection to the express lanes. Now we're making them to both. That was a request by the city. They actually wanted to focus on the general purpose lanes, but we were able to make both connections. And what that actually does, it improves operations at 95, less weaving because people are going right into the lanes that they want. It also removes even more traffic from the local lanes because now people won't have to get out. They'll have more accessibility to the roads if they go into the connector lanes. The areas in between, these are what are called local access points, local intermediate access points, so that the local road will have more of a connection with the connector road. And this was very important prior to making all these connections to 95, primarily to make sure we're getting enough traffic, a balance of traffic between the connector and the local lanes. The circle on the right here represent the ramps coming from the local lanes, which include 12th Avenue around Newport Center and the eastbound Southwest 10th Street to be able to get into the connector lane and go west. This red line here represents the exit from the connector lanes. If I'm going eastbound and I don't want to go to 95, I can get off and I can access the Newport Center business area, or I can continue east on Southwest 10th Street. If I wanted to get to 95, I'd still have access to the ramps that exist today on Southwest 10th Street. We had been challenged to look at creating more green space on the project. We're able to do that in a couple of different ways. The one set of ramps that you see here, there's an option to either include those in the project or not. And then we've got several slides to talk through that. But these are ramps that are just east of the Powerline Road intersection. This would allow you, if you're eastbound in the local lanes, to get into the connector lane and either continue and use the ramp to get down to Newport Center and Southwest 10th Street East, or to 95. And if I'm already on the connector lanes, I would be able to access from the connector lanes, the westbound local lanes, and be able to access Powerline Road intersection and those residents to the west here. So just going back in history, a lot of public engagement, as Rob mentioned, and it has created changes in the projects. So we continue to solicit the feedback and get the feedback and make adjustments where we can and try and improve wherever we can to make it a more balanced project for everybody. These are just some of the illustrations of what was determined back in April 2018. We settled in on the northern alignment. We also looked at trying to reduce some of the impacts that the project was creating. And then in November of 2018, this is where there was a big push to allow trucks in the connector lanes, which we have allowed. We moved the bridge further to the west away from a waterways entrance. We're not tolling the connector lane, but we did settle in on the westbound depressed ramp as a preferred alternative. And as Rob mentioned, we were going forward and looking like we were going to have a public hearing, and there was several concerns that were raised by the city, and we postponed that hearing. And this slide just represents the 5 big concerns that they had mentioned to us. And the first one is dealing with the connections to 95. And I said, we're making those connections now. So we feel we've addressed that fairly well. The complete street element, what we've done is move the bike lanes from the pavement and increase the width of the sidewalk to 12 foot. So we have a shared use path that goes the length of the corridor. It actually goes up and over 95 to the east. So it's a continuous shared use path that'll accommodate both pedestrians and bicyclists. Item number 3, I know it's a star, but it's just meant to be not a check mark, just because we know we're not increasing the depressed section more than what we were. And that was a concern. What we have done, though, is we have created more green space. We have completed the noise analysis that warrants noise walls for all the residential areas that front Southwest 10th Street. So all those areas are warranted for noise walls. And we've also looked at and we've enhanced our renderings to show a more likely landscaping scheme as part of the process. But we've also, and I've got some slides just trying to explain some of the challenges we have in depressing more of the road than what we are and what the benefits that we see we'd get with more depressed lanes. And then the not enough green space, we've addressed that in a couple fashions, and I'm going to have some slides to explain that. And one of the bigger ones is the change in the alternatives, or the option of with and without ramps, because it does create quite a bit of green space and some options, particularly in the center of the corridor where Waterford Homes is. It actually has a huge impact on Waterford Courtyards as well as Waterford Homes. And then as far as the Turnpike, we've been working with them, and we presented their connections, their priority connections. They've had some meetings recently with the city where the city is pushing them to try and get a couple more in, and they are evaluating that. And as Rob said, they are now looking back and seeing if they can make even additional connections, but it's quite a challenge for them because they have several impacts that they're trying to avoid, but they'll continue that process and continue the coordination with the city, and hopefully early next year they'll be able to do more public engagement on that. Yes, we have a question here.
Yeah, my question is going to relate to 2 things that I would like to have addressed. One is the sound wall, who's going to take care of it, and the landscaping, who will take care of that in the future. These questions have been brought up in the past, and it's kind of shuffled away, so if those 2 questions could be addressed now as you go through the rest of the presentation.
Okay, so the question was, who's going to be maintaining the sound wall and also the landscaping? We get this question quite a bit, and typically what fdot does, they maintain the sound walls. A lot of times they'll maintain the front of the sound walls, and they'll allow residents to maintain the backside. That's typically how it's done. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and people aren't happy with the backside of the walls. And then as far as the landscaping, that's a combination of what exactly gets constructed. The DOT is willing to construct a significant landscaping, but when it comes to maintenance, there's a certain threshold that they'll maintain, and then if it goes beyond that, they'd be looking for support from the city. And so that'll be one of those final design things that can continue through this process to evolve to whatever it needs to be. But it's going to be an agreement between the city and the state as far as what that ultimately looks like.
Let me just add to that a little bit. What Bill said, he's right. This,
When I mic or unmute?
I'm unmuted, I believe. So this is the roadway corridor is owned by the state of Florida. So obviously, when we do build this constructive sound walls, we will maintain those. We have found by working with individual communities, there are situations where they may want the sound wall a little bit closer to them, which puts the DOT in a position where we're unable to access the back. So that's what Phil was talking about. If that's the community's desire, if that works best within their plan, we can do that. But we can have other options about the location of the sound wall. As long as the department has the ability to access it from both sides, they would certainly maintain it. As far as the landscaping, we have a robust landscaping budget for this project, several millions of dollars. So we're certainly able to basically landscape it. Typically, we will do the Department of Transportation will landscape trees and basically sodding and things like that. But what we call enhanced landscaping, a lot of extra additional landscape features that are enhanced over what the department typically would do. We would ask the city or the county, depending on where the area is, to actually enter into agreement with us, and so they would maintain that. So that would be their desire. We're willing to pay for and construct enhanced landscaping on the project, but if it is that type of landscaping, we do ask the cities to maintain it.
I believe we also have a hand raised. Is that true, Miranda?
Yes, but okay, Mr. Albert, but I can unmute you. Can you try unmuting yourself? I don't think he has a microphone connected.
All right, we're gonna
You can
keep going.
also-
Somebody can chat with,
Yes.
person with their hand raised. I don't see a microphone for them.
Yes.
So they may have to type it in if they don't have a audio. We're
Yes,
gonna
Mr. Albert,
continue.
you can also submit your question through the question box, but I'll reach
So
out
there's
to
a
you
couple
on-
of areas that I'll focus in on through the presentation. The complete street, just to make sure everybody's clear on what that means or what we're doing. And again, we show a shared use path as the base concept now versus having bike lanes in the pavement and a paved shoulder. And what that does, it creates even more green space opportunities, landscape opportunities for the roadway. And just going back in history, this is the center alignment and northern alignment from the workshop number 1, the northern on the left, and it was decided not to split the local lanes. There was concern with doing that, so now we're on the northern alignment. And then this is a graphic from left to right. You see Powerline Road. The shaded areas represent residential areas. Part of our goal was to avoid elevating roadways adjacent to residential areas, but this area to the right where we're going to Military Trail, we have to go over Military and the railroad. So that creates a need to raise the roadway in this area, which we really can't avoid. The nearest home is approximately 230 feet from where we would have to start raising the road. So you'll see a gradual incline as it goes over Military Trail. And on the west end, we have several utilities north-south of power line. So going underneath power line creates a lot of challenges, and it also creates a lot of business impacts for a long period of time, particularly on the south side of the intersection. And there's a C3 canal, similar to C2 canal. The drainage in this area flows from south to north. So those C3 and C2 canals handles the drainage as it moves to the north and ultimately to the Hillsborough Canal as the ultimate outfall. And then we also have the park over here where our project really needs to avoid any impacts to the park. It's critical as part of our environmental process that we look to avoid that. And again, the homes are fairly far away from where the actual raised road would be. This is further away. They have a little bit of a lake buffer there or a canal buffer. But in the center, this is where we do that westbound depressed ramp, where we see the opportunity to avoid that elevation by depressing the westbound ramp. So that gives us an opportunity to do that, and you're going to see more on that in a minute. So what this represents here is, again, the line diagram, just to show you an illustration of the fully depressed, the length that was going through Powerline Road. And then we had several partially depressed options that are about a half a mile in length that I'm going to show you here, which we had at the workshop back in November of 2018. And they all basically accomplish the same thing. We have a ramp that's highlighted yellow. This is the ramp that we're trying to get, the westbound connector lane to get to local Southwest 10th Street. So there's different ways to do that, to have that go over the connector road and depress all the connector road in this section, or just depress the eastbound connector road, or where we ended up settling in on was just to depress the ramp, minimize that depressed area to keep that at grade elevation. When you look at these areas for depressing all the lanes of the connector lane, since we have to go up and go over power line and go up and over Military, it's a very small section that it actually goes deep enough that we could put in a cap and potentially landscape that cap. And that's what you see in green here and here. So when we were at that point, we decided we weren't getting enough benefits for the impact that was creating, and we settled in on that westbound depressed ramp. And this is just an illustration of what it takes to depress a road, particularly in South Florida. You can see the water table is very high, so we have to drive these sheet piles, which require long anchors that go outside of the right-of-way in some areas, in order to support those sheet piles so that we can dig out the dirt that we need to construct this roadway section. And this roadway section equates to about 10 feet of concrete on the bottom, with what's called ground anchors that hold that concrete down so it doesn't float. So that's just an idea of the effort there. We have a hand raised here.
I have a question. When you're talking about digging in and putting this structures, I mean, we are right, I guess we're the ones that are going to be worst affected because we're right in the corner of 409. So we're right on 10 and
But it with 24,000.
and 24. So when you're talking about digging these deep and selling that, how is that gonna affect the structure of my house, this house, and the house that are right there?
Right. So what I'm showing here, the question was, because of all this construction and the amount of effort or the amount of work that's needed with soil anchors and the extension that it has outside of the right-of-way in some cases, what kind of impact will it have on homes to construct something like this? So that's a good question. We typically drive sheet piles on projects all the time, and it's a vibratory activity that if they need to, they'll drill pilot holes in advance in order to reduce the amount of vibrations. It's really the vibrations that construction causes that could potentially damage homes. So they do different things to dampen those vibrations and minimize those. What I'm showing here is if we were to construct that fully depressed section, which is not an option that's moving forward, it's more trying to provide that justification that people are looking for why we're not building something like this. So we did not want to go through this effort of depressing all the connector lanes because of the impacts it's creating for what we saw as very minor benefits with those caps I showed you. That section you saw there is really, if we were to depress something like this. So you said this is 28th Avenue. This is between Waterford Courtyards and Waterford Homes here. So the sheet piling would be in this area here. So it's still quite a distance from the homes, even with the soil anchors over here. On the right-hand side, though, these soil anchors would go into this parking lot underneath the parking lot of Century Village. But this is not an option we're looking at this point. We are looking at this westbound depress ramp, which is a much smaller section. So the sheet piles will not have to be as deep, and there's different ways to support it. So as far as, and we have an option with and without that ramp. One more question.
I'd like to add just one thing to that, because you did mention, you asked about vibration and your concerns for the homes. We do have specifications that we're going to use for this project that would be monitor vibration monitoring. So anytime that type of work where we would be driving piles in a similar manner that Phil described, we will introduce this vibration monitoring. The contractor will be required to keep those vibration monitored to a certain extent, that we make sure that it won't do any damage to the nearby homes. And that's something that the DOT hires construction inspectors to monitor that, to kind of watch over the contractor to make sure that they follow the right procedures during the construction.
And if those procedures aren't followed, because these things happen.
If those procedures aren't followed, we have the ability to shut down the contractor, to tell them to stop work. So that's a rare occurrence, because typically the contractors, who in essence, the contractor is responsible for any damage they do to somebody's home. So they are basically do not want to damage your home as well. So we take a lot of efforts to make sure that that work that's done is done in such a manner that it doesn't cause damage outside of the right of way.
So that
I'm sorry, I was muted then because I'm switching because they hear an echo. So if I'm talking, you need to mute. You muted? Okay. So the question was whether we could show the limits or more details of exactly where we'd be doing the sheet piling. So I have some graphics that'll be easier to show that on. So let me continue, and if there's any more questions, just raise your hand. We talked about that. So now we want to talk about the green space, and that's what I was mentioning. We really have an option to either construct these ramps or not. And this particular, I know it's this red ramp here, this is the westbound ramp from the connector lane that goes under the eastbound. So this is the depressed section here. Okay, and the Newport Center ramps, we looked at whether we get a benefit from removing those from a green space, but it's all elevated in that area anyhow. We really weren't gaining any green space, and it helped get traffic off of the local streets, so we're not proposing to do anything different at Newport Center with those ramps. It's really just that set of ramps east of Powerline Road. So we're looking at with and without, and we have some graphics to help illustrate that. So the top graphic you see represents the with ramp concept. So we have a eastbound local lanes, which is on the south side, which is the darker gray or black. And then we have the express lanes, which are a lighter gray on the north side. So the blue represents the actual ramp. So this is the eastbound ramp that comes in, and it's just, it has to elevate over, but then it comes down and the connector lane's at grade, and it just joins the connector lane and continues toward I-95. In the westbound direction, there's another blue ramp, and you see this ramp here, it goes under the eastbound connector lane to get to local Southwest 10th Street. So this area here, so it really extends beyond to the west of Waterford Courtyards, and it actually extends probably to the edge of Waterford Homes, which is a little bit off the page, would require sheet piling in this area. And I have another graphic that shows a little bit more what the offsets are to the local lane, so you can, we can add a little bit more so you can see where that would be locally. And one of the illustrations from this example is to show you that if we remove those ramps, you gain some green space on the local lanes on the south side of the corridor. So just to get an idea of that with or without ramps, the limits of the change really affect this area here between Military Trail and Powerline. That's the influence of those ramps, you know, starting the ramp and ending it, or connecting where you would have that extra lane anyhow, because you do have to form a lane, an exit lane, in order to get off the connector lane. So we have a blow up of an area here, because I know offsets were very important. We had talked about with some of the HOA board members before, and they were asking about offsets. So we will have a graphic to show a little bit more of a close-up of what they look like. So again, the connector lane is the light gray. The dark black is the local lanes. So you can see Waterford Homes right here. And with the Powerline Road ramps, you have about, and this is to the nearest home, okay? So to the nearest homes, we're showing 112 feet to the through edge of pavement, 98 feet over here where we have a turn lane. That gets a little closer, but it's a little over 100 feet offset from the homes to the local lanes. Now, if we were to construct the press section, this darker gray here, this is that lane that would get depressed. So the orange lines you see, not necessarily here, but right at this point, this is where we would need to drive some sheet piles in order to dig out and support the area for the construction of that depressed road. So you can see that's another, you know, that would be another 100 feet away. In this area, it does get closer as it gets to Waterford Courtyards, which will be a little bit tighter. And then the sheet piles are deepest at the deepest point, and the deepest point is where the road would cross under the eastbound lanes. So it's a pretty good distance away, and we are able to put those soil anchors in prior to the property lines of the homes on the south side.
138 feet is what it is in the bottom right there.
Oh, I'm sorry, the bottom picture is without ramps. So if we did not build those ramps, the local lanes are moved further away from the homes. So you can see without the ramps, you don't have this ramp, so the connectivity is not there. It will increase traffic. I've got some traffic numbers that I'm going to go over in a minute. But you will have more of an offset from the homes to the local lanes on the bottom picture, and that's what that represents. So it's about 40 feet, I think, high 30s to 40 feet in some areas, as far as a larger buffer between the home and the actual local lanes of Southwest 10th Street. This is just a section view of with ramps, and what I want to point out, and I don't know if I have my animation here because I don't have my cheat sheet screen going, But the pink represents the westbound depressed ramp, so you can see that going down. And there's an extra lane here. This is the eastbound ramp. So this is the with ramp concept. So if we eliminate these two, we also eliminate the shoulders that go with this and some gore areas. So it creates a lot of space that we can add green space to. And we have some of the numbers here that you saw on that graphic with the offsets to homes. But the trade-off by not building these ramps, you gain a lot of green space, but the trade-off is that you do not reduce the traffic as much as if you had the ramps from the local lanes. So both alternatives reduce the traffic quite a bit, and that's reducing the 2040 projected traffic less than what it is today. So the peak hour volumes today are much greater than what they'll be in 2040 on the local lanes. So in 2040, with the ramps, we're projecting a 73% decrease in the AM peak hour and 52% in the PM hour. And then sorry, I clicked that and I didn't mean to. And so without the ramps, it's still a reduction from what the traffic is today. It goes down 40% in the AM and 20% in the PM. So it's not as great as with ramps, but it's still considerably less than it is today. This is just simply a rendering of the area. This is in front of the Waterford courtyards. They have a number of existing trees, which you see on the bottom. This is the without ramp concept. And what's happening here is that the road is actually moved about 50 feet away from the top picture. So it's a little hard to pick all that up. I've got a couple more graphics that help illustrate that. But these existing trees, we have to purchase right away from Waterford courtyards, about anywhere from 9 to 18 feet. And so a lot of these large trees are within that area, so they get removed if we were to build the ramps. And these FP&L transmission lines have to move closer to the residents. Whereas if we did not build the ramps, these poles could either remain or at least remain in the same general area, and we gain about 30 feet of green space.
Okay, Phil, let me.
Yeah.
I want to go ahead and add one thing to what Phil said to kind of reiterate. The numbers he's talking about as far as the reduction in traffic, that's the reduction in traffic in the year 2040. So when he's talking about whether it's a 70% or down to a 20% reduction in traffic, that's not when the project is just complete. That's in 2040. Our projection will be in 2040 that the traffic with and without ramps will be considerably less than the traffic that's out there today. Or actually, even today, it's down a little bit, about 8 or 9% than what it has been because of COVID. But if you go back to last year when the traffic was probably heaviest, it'll still be a lot less traffic in the year 2040 than it was in the last several years.
Phil, I think you're on mute.
All audio.
All right. So sorry about that, everybody. Rob and I are tag teaming so we don't give you guys an echo, and I forgot to unmute. So one of the questions was whether the offsets are to the homes or the property lines, and I just want to reiterate the offsets we're showing are to the nearest homes. So I went back to the offset graphic that we had, and we can provide to the property line as well. We had that initially and people got a little confused with it, so we used the homes. And it's a little odd because at Waterford Courtyards, we're buying property, so which property line do we use? If we're buying 12 feet from them, do we use what we're buying? So we figured the home is going to stay no matter what. That was a better frame of reference. So we talked quite a bit about what's the best thing to show. So if you want more information, we can get it, but the offsets we're showing are to the homes, nearest homes. So I wanted to go over the traffic figures fairly quickly, but to give you an idea, the graphic you see here, the green boxes up at the top portion represent the connector lanes. Now I just got a text saying no audio. Monica, are we good?
We hear you. We hear you now.
I unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Anybody?
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, we're going to keep going. It's like we're in a trap box here. Okay, so the green numbers represent the with and without ramps. The gold box represents with ramps. The blue box represents without ramps. The black or gray boxes at the bottom represent the local lanes and the traffic in the local lanes. And we have Powerline Road on the left and Military Trail on the right. So the local lane, there's not a big difference between the alternates on both sides, one on Military and west of Powerline. But the area in the middle has the biggest difference between alternatives. It also makes the biggest difference, the build project versus the existing traffic as well. So you can see today that blue box that we show, that's existing traffic. That's actually 2016 peak hour volumes. In the future, in 2040, that 2,500 cars an hour in the AM will drop to 660 in the AM and 1,240 in the PM. That's that reduction I was telling you before, the 73% in the AM and 52% in the PM, whereas the without ramp option reduces it versus existing. It's much more than with ramps, but it's still quite a bit lower than it is today, 40% in the AM and 20% in the PM. And the traffic flow, if I'm driving on Southwest 10th Street, the local, the travel time to go through the corridor will be the same in the local lanes with or without the ramps. So the ramps really provide that accessibility, particularly if you're along Powerline and to the west. And it also helps reduce the peak hour traffic volumes and also the daily traffic volumes in this area. But the travel flow, because of the numbers are still pretty low, the flow will operate the same with or without the ramps. So the graphic I have here, this is to kind of help give you an illustration of the with ramp concept and the green space. This is actually in front of Waterford Courtyard. You see Waterford Homes a little bit farther in the distance here, but the ramp comes in here and it goes under the eastbound connector lanes. And so in this area, we've relocated transmission lines, we've purchased right away, and we've removed those large trees. So when I click this, it's going to transition to the without ramp option. So you can see the effect. If we did not build the ramps, we get more green space. The large trees get to remain. These poles are in their same spot that they exist today. And again, I'm going to do that fairly quick to show you the with ramp concept and then without. And both concepts have a 12-foot shared use path. We're able to meander it a little bit more here and put more landscaping in because of the additional green space. And this is just a side-by-side comparison. And now I do want to talk about noise walls. I know that's a big item for most residential areas, including Waterford Homes. We have noise walls that are warranted, means they meet all the criteria to build for all the frontage of Southwest 10th Street for residential areas. There is a section along Military that we could not prove feasible at the moment, but we do recommend it gets evaluated in the next phase. As more details are available, we believe hopefully that we can justify that. but that's what that orange line is along Military. So we want to show, when we were here before, or when we talked about it before, we had looked at a wall that was really trying to provide the most abatement. And so I'm going to show you I'm going to show you what provides the most abatement, which is our preferred, but we recognize that more options need to be made to address all the concerns of the landscaping and the berm, which will be a trade-off as far as how much abatement you're going to get from alternative wall designs. And that's something that we want to show you what we've documented as potential options. And we expect that'll continue into the design phase to really work out the details with the residents and the city and the department. So what you see here is what we had talked about just a couple of months ago. This is the Waterford homes, and typically we would construct a wall inside of the property line. This is a unique area because this property, you know, between the roadway and the homes is actually owned by the city. They have a city facility here and some wells that they get drinking water from. So they're a major partner in whatever gets moved forward in this area. And of course, they're a major partner on this project, getting it to the best they can before making any type of decisions on it. So what we're showing is the with and without ramps. And again, we're just showing an offset, just so a reminder of what those offsets are to the homes. But this shows a ground mounted wall that would be 4 feet just to the north of your property lines, or to the property lines. And this would have an impact on that berm. Now what goes in front of it, how that gets worked out is something that we would work with the city and so forth. But we have an option that can be warranted, but it doesn't provide as much abatement. And that would be to push the wall to the north, follow the path, so to speak, avoid the city facilities if that was agreeable to them, but then save some of the berm. We get tight in some areas and just try and salvage as much of that buffer as possible. And again, this is the city property, so I'm not sure what their plans are, and we'll have to kind of work that out in the next phase. But this is a wall that can be justified as an option. It won't provide as much abatement. So when you get into the next phase, you can get more details on exactly what the noise reduction would be for different walls. We've had areas where we've justified or warranted a 22-foot height. People may want a 20-foot height. So there's back and forth on what the residents are really looking for and what the city's looking for. But again, once you reduce heights and move walls, you lose some of that abatement. But it still needs to meet a certain criteria. So we believe this could meet a criteria. And you see on the without ramp concept, this would move it further away from the berm. But again, we have to work with the city on their facilities on exactly where that would be located in reference to their facilities to make sure something could work. So either case, we believe that something could be done. There is also an option that you see in this blue dashed or purple. I'm trying to think what that is. I'm going to try one more click. Yeah, okay. So there's also an option where a potential 14-foot shoulder-mounted wall on the connector lane could provide abatement. It won't be as good as either one of these, but that's another option. Again, that's something that we have to work out with the city, as well as whether that would continue something that Waterford Courtyards would want as well. We have a question here.
To answer my question then, would these feet away from the property line, would these walls always be taken care of by fdot and not fall back on the residents? Because you said it depended if you had accessibility to both sides of the wall.
Yeah, well, the DOT would have to have some sort of agreement with the city, because we can't maintain anything that's not in our property, or that we don't have a right to. That's a city parcel right now. So we would have to work that out with the city as far as what that agreement would look like and who would maintain it. No matter where it is in that property, we have to do that. So we're not sure what it's going to look like or what exactly the details would be. I mean, typically if it's a DOT sound wall, DOT will maintain the wall.
You didn't say that.
I promise. So on the option that you're showing here right now without the power line for ramps, it looks like the wall would be substantially away from the berm, and the berm would be able to be attacked. Is that an accurate assumption of what I'm seeing here?
This would require more coordination with the city and their facilities, realignment of that shared use path to get closer to the roadway. But if we're able to get it in that area, it moves it quite a distance from the berm. This one is a little bit questionable whether we can keep the offsets that we need. And then also the FP&L transmission lines have to meander their way through here as well. So we're in that process. But yeah, this is the option that would salvage as much of that berm as possible. You know, it moves it further away than the one up top for sure. Yeah, we have one more question.
The wall will be always straight. My house is the one in the corner. So I'm wondering if you put the wall like this and the sound is gonna go.
So you're over here? Is this? Okay. Yeah, that's a challenge. And again, that would be something you'd be concerned about, traffic noise coming particularly off the connector lane. This that would get through here.
Sure, you know, because if you build a wall like this, the noise, I guess, will probably go through.
Yeah, you get some exposure in this area here. And again,
The wall is not continuing from the street, it will stop there, right?
yeah, it would stop here. There's this is not a residential area that you wouldn't be able to put it in this area. If you were to look at something wrapping it around, again, that would also depend on what the city, they have to access their well. They have a well over here. So again, that would be some of those design details as to how that could be most effective, but still allow people the access that they need for their facilities.
Because I believe right there too, have like, not a park, but something that people walk, like a walkway and a bicycle, something.
Yeah, that has to fit in that area. So that would get squeezed a little bit, and that's why, you know, the noise wall closer to your homes would be more effective for you. You know, from a noise abatement standpoint, you see how close it is here.
And then you move forward.
Yeah.
But the side wall closer to your home, 4 feet from property line, you will not see the ground.
Yeah. So, and as we mentioned, when we get into final design, you'll get a lot more detail, and you can coordinate with the city, and we'll coordinate with the city and the residents to come up with whatever options are best. And at that point in time, when you have options that are feasible, it'll go to a vote. The people mostly on that first row, sometimes the second row, will be the ones that get surveyed of whether the wall is built. And if there's an option, say if there's 2 options, which option they would prefer. And
It's all the 5 houses right there is the most significant for everybody. You know, all the benefits they're gonna give so many people, but we are the one they're gonna be suffering for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, the same thing on the other side.
Like,
All along the side.
I have a question. Was ever an option of building the wall right where the street ends, like right next to it, like it's built at some part of the Sawgrass, or you see the wall right there, or no?
That's what this option is here. It would be a 14-foot shoulder-mounted wall along the eastbound connector lane. So you wouldn't try and build a wall next to the local lanes. You'd put it here, but again, that's a 14-foot high wall, and I know nobody wanted to see a wall of the road going up, so I wasn't sure, you know, how well that would be received by people as well. And plus, you wouldn't get as much noise abatement.
Also, it'll be the same, the ones that you're getting in the software, you see those walls right there, will be a different.
I've got some pictures later on to give you an idea of what a shoulder mounted wall looks like versus ground mount, just to make sure we're understanding each other. So I want to, and I've talked a little bit about this as far as typically it's the first and second row. I think we have a graphic that shows who would most likely be the ones that get surveyed for a noise wall to construct it or not. This is that example I was showing you. This is aesthetics could change and they're different. You see them a lot of different types around. This is just an illustration of a ground mounted noise wall. And what you see on the right is a shoulder mount wall. So it's right on the shoulder, and this would be something that we would look at along the connector lane if that was acceptable to everybody between the connector lane and the local lane, as far as being able to provide sufficient abatement to warrant building it, but also be acceptable to the city and the residents. And I know this is probably tough to see. We have a table that helps illustrate the with and without ramps. And a lot of this is information we were talking about as far as the, and here is where, because I told you we went back and forth on these offsets, whether they're from property line or to the homes. And so this table actually says edge of pavement to the property line. So we didn't update this like we did the graphics, but it shows, you know, basically the offset from what's out there today in the no-build condition, and then compares it with the with power line road ramps and without. So similar numbers, just a little bit less because it's just going to the property line versus the homes. And the right-of-way impact I mentioned, there's 9.9 to 18 feet at Waterford courtyards. The transmission lines with ramps need to be relocated about 30 feet closer to the homes. This example, this column here is the local traffic. We talked a lot about peak hour volumes. We think a lot about peak hour volumes just because that's what really creates the delay. The more the peak hour is congested, that's where you get the delay. But the average annual daily traffic, there's also an improvement on that. We have that compared to the existing average annual daily traffic, which is AADT. The traffic flow, as I mentioned before, and I can email you this PDF so you have all this.
Also, would you include the times of the peak traffic that you guys have learned? Because I don't see that listed here. I see AM, PM, but not the actual time.
The peak hour volumes, projected peak hour volumes?
Yeah. I mean, is it 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
Well, normally it's 7:30 in the morning and 5:30 in the evening. So as I mentioned before, the traffic flow in both alternatives, if you're on the connector lane, the traffic flow remains the same. If you're on the local lanes, the traffic flow remains the same. But you lose that accessibility with the connector lane. Without those ramps, if you're on power line and you want to get to 95, you'll either use the local lane or you'll go up to Hillsborough or Sample, depending on where you're at. And so what we have here is really just a summary matrix of some of the evaluation categories. And these are the differences between with and without ramps. We recognize that aesthetics is part of it, traffic volumes, also construction disruption, like you were pointing out with the building that depressed ramp, that's much more disruptive, and then also the right-of-way and utility impacts as far as differences between the alternatives. And what I have is several renderings of the project starting on the west end, just to show you a few of these, mostly at intersections looking east and west. And again, all these are available on the website. They're in a rendering booklet. But what you see is on the left-hand side, you see the whole corridor. Well, you see the whole corridor up at the top, 95 to the right, the turnpike over here to the left, power line in the middle. This blue box represents where we're at for our rendering. And the right hand lower picture is a blow up of the roll plot that we have online that shows you the location of just a blow up of that intersection or wherever the camera is. The blue represents the camera and the direction it's pointing. So this is right at the intersection of waterways looking to the west. This is that bridge that at one point was right in front of this entryway that we were able to move and work the geometry to get it further to the west. And then this is from the same intersection just looking to the east. You can see the shared use path. And now this is up at Independence Bay looking to the west. And now looking to the east. And this is that connector lanes going over power line. You can see power line in the distance. And this, what you see right here is the eastbound ramp to get to the connector lane. So I'm pointing that out because the next slide will show you without that ramp. So it's very subtle, but you'll see that's with the ramp. And now that's without. So it disappears, but you don't see too much. So we're pretty far away with this picture. And this is just south of Power Line Road, or south on Power Line Road, looking to the north at the connector lane overpass. And then this is at Power Line and Southwest 10th looking to the east. There's a little extra green space here, so we placed some aesthetics, potential treatments. And you can see the eastbound ramp right here. So if you wanted to get to the connector lane, just to the east of Power Line, this is where you would go to the left and you'd be able to take a fly over the local lanes and get into the connector lane. And this is without that ramp. Now as we get closer to, this is at Waterford Courtyards. This is the with ramp concept. Looking to the east, you see Century Village to the left. This is actually where the ramp would come up. So you see pavement here, a little bit of green, and then more pavement. This is where that westbound ramp starts coming up and surfacing before it ties in just to the east of Power Line Road. And this is the without, and this is the large landscaping that's in there right away that if we're purchasing 9 to 18 feet, we would have to remove as part of that. And the transmission lines get to stay in the same general location. And then here's another one just looking from the roadway. And again, this is the width ramp option. So we purchased the right of way. The landscaping is gone, or the large trees are gone. And now this is similar to what you saw on the slide before. We have extra green space without the ramp, and these trees get to remain. So this is an aerial looking down. You see that depressed ramp coming up under here. So this is kind of looking the opposite of that other rendering that I showed you where that's at. But this is going underneath these eastbound connector lanes, and you have that extra lane here from the eastbound ramp that comes in here. And then this is without, so you gain some green space here and you don't have those ramps. And then this is one at 24th Avenue looking to the west, and this is the with ramp concept, and then this is the without. We've got several around Military Trail. This is north of 10th Street looking to the south. And this is where everything has to go over Military and the railroad. And then this is from the south quadrant looking to the northeast at the same. And again, we have the shared use path that continues. We're actually continuing sidewalk over here. This is Century Village in this area here on the left of this rendering. They don't have sidewalk there, so that'll continue to the north. This is one looking at the interchange now. We're getting at 95. This is Newport Center. So you can see the ramps coming in and out of I-95 from the connector lanes. And now this is on the north. As you can see the circle here, this is the camera looking south at the interchange. In order to make those connections to general purpose and express lanes, you see these braids that we have set up. So the interchange doesn't have to get higher compared to what we had a year ago. We're able to make those adjustments within the north and south of the interchange. And these are just several pictures as the camera rotates around the connector lanes or around the interchange. Again, looking to the south. This is straight down 10th Street. So we're over here by Nautica, looking to the west at the interchange coming together, the connector lanes coming together and going to the west. And again, this is at the interchange, but looking to the north now up toward Hillsborough, boulevard in the distance with the ramps being able to get to the general purpose lanes as well as the express lanes and vice versa from I-95, both general purpose and the express lanes. So as Rob mentioned earlier, we had several webinars well attended that we provided a lot of information. We've been continuing with our HOA and stakeholder meetings in coordination with the city. We've also done a lot of updates to the adjacent cities who wanted updates. We have been putting out information on social media, trying to get people to sign up and register and attend a public hearing, which we have scheduled for next week. We have multiple virtual sessions on the 12th, 13th, and 14th, and we're also having an in-person session at the fdot District 4 office on October 15th. We have 4 sessions set up for that, and COVID restrictions will apply and guidelines, just like we're doing here today. So hopefully you can join either a virtual or an in-person session, whatever you're more comfortable doing. All the sessions are going to be the same. The comment period on the virtual sessions will be recorded and posted so everybody can listen to any comments that are made. The in-person comments are going to be taken by a court reporter, so they'll be transcribed. Once those are ready, they'll get posted on the website as well, so everybody will be able to have access to all the comments that are made with the multiple sessions. Registration is required. We're trying to monitor the group so that we can be as interactive as we can as part of the public hearing, and also especially in the in-person, to make sure we're abiding by all the social distancing and making sure people are safe. As Rob mentioned, we have LDCA anticipated for spring of 2021, so that's probably June 20th versus summer, but it could go in the summer. Sometimes these things take a while for approval, but we are looking to, after the public hearing, after the comments are in, keep our coordination going with the city. And then when a decision is made on with or without ramps, that'll be announced. We'll do a presentation to the MPO board members at some point prior to finalizing or requesting approval for our LDCA, which goes up to Tallahassee for that acceptance. So this is just a recap. I'm not sure if we have any questions. I know we're having some audio difficulties.
Phil, can you hear me?
I know there was an email comment or question that came in, and so I'm not sure if Monica or Miranda, do you want to tell us what that question is? Anybody
Phil,
there?
can you hear us?
Anyone?
Phil, can you hear us?
All right, we can't hear you guys. Kelsey, can you speak? Can we hear you?
Phil, can you hear me? Anything? I will send you the question via chat.
Can you guys speak? All right, they have some chat going. Read the chat. Okay. Getting a lot of all right. So they can hear us, but we can't hear anybody else. So we're going to read the chat. Okay. So the question is, all of these options seem like massive overkill. Why can't we just add a lane in both directions? You're turning our neighborhoods into concrete jungles and obliterating our home values. Have you studied the economic impact to the neighborhoods abutting 595? Did you ever study the economic impact to the neighborhoods abutting this proposed construction? Will there be significant decreases to our tax responsibility or some type of compensation for our losses? That's a powerful question. You want to cover that? I'm gonna unmute. Oh, now I'm here.
So this question has certainly a number of different parts. I'll kind of take it bit by bit, so to speak. We have looked at if you just add a single lane in each direction to the existing Southwest 10th Street local roadway, because of the number of signals along the corridor and the amount of traffic, you don't really have that much of a positive impact into reducing congestion, certainly not long term. By introducing the connector lanes, we're able to remove a large percentage of the traffic from the local roadway and put them on lanes that do not have to stop to signalize. So those, by not impeding the movement, you're reducing the congestion. And by taking the amount of traffic off the local lane, you're freeing up a lot of that, I call it local lane capacity. So the local lanes will function, operate much better with certainly less congestion. And those trips that are by those vehicles that are just trying to pass through more of a regional trip effort, they won't be impeded. And so they'll basically have a smooth operating trip as well. So we are making a lot of efforts, and hopefully you all can see that, to add in a lot of green space. We do not want it to look like a concrete jungle. We are still in PD&E. I mentioned before, we do have a very good landscape kind of budget for this project. A lot of those details and a lot more effort going into the landscaping aspect will be done in the next phase. So really the idea of this phase is really just to come up with a concept, and we certainly want to understand that there's important aspects of understanding how the project's going to look is important. And that's why through these renderings, we attempted to show you that. But we still have a lot of work to do to get into more details. And our intention is to really do a lot of aesthetic treatments along the corridor, as well with landscaping and other types of treatments that can be done. We showed them on some of the bridges and some of the aspects of a rendering. You can see some of those aesthetic features that we can add to it to make it more pleasing, and so it can be a nice corridor. In regard to home values, we have, the Department of Transportation has looked at other projects, larger kind of projects similar to this, and we have found that over time, that even if there are areas that that property values have dipped, and dipping may not be a good scenario, because property values are really a function of more of the economic, and they follow the regional realty as far as home values. A lot of us know what happened basically back in the late 2000s, 2008. We had a large dip in home values. You know, so we experienced that whether you're right in an area or a corridor like this or not. But we have found though, in our looking at our projects we've done and talking to like realtors or realtor associations, is that during the construction, that does have a tendency to hold down or maintain the values. But after the construction is complete, we found that those projects, such as it's mentioned here, 595, they have rebounded. So the property values along 595 basically haven't been depressed anymore around the region as you would normally expect in any other area. So hopefully I answered that.
Are there any additional questions? Hopefully people are able to talk. I'm not sure what's going on with the audio, but past our time, and I know we started a little bit late. I want to thank everybody for their participation. Hopefully the audio
Kelsey, can you hear me? I think we lost audio. Can you hear me, Miranda and Kelsey? This is Monica.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, okay,
Yes.
everyone, I'm sorry about that. They're broadcasting from the in-person location, and we're experiencing some technical difficulties, as you can see, but thank you very much for your cooperation tonight and your questions and tuning in. You can download the presentation in the handout section. You can visit our website, and please register if you have not already registered for our hearings. We have virtual and in-person sessions. They're all available online. sw10street.com is where you can go and check out all the options. There's 9 sessions, virtual sessions, and 4 in-person sessions happening next week. So the conversation's still continuing, and we again thank you very much for being with us this evening. If you have any follow-up questions, do not hesitate to email us. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll be ending the session. Thank you.